we study English at school. It is part of the curriculum, but most Brazilians, when they finish high school, they can barely speak English.
I can say that my level was not sufficient after school. My level wasn't even enough to pass the entrance exam. So I was totally not prepared for real-life conversations with natives, for example. I would simply not understand them.
Actually, today we're going to be digging deeper into your personal journey, learning English, how you got to this amazing level you have today. Ksenia, one of the things I've heard many times from learners is how the only way for you to speak fluent English is by studying with native teachers or native speakers. But most of your English learning was done practicing with non-natives. Am I right?
Yeah, totally true. All my teachers were from my hometown, and the tutors, private tutors I was working with, all of them, they were from here.
Incredible. Before we get started, if you guys are watching us here on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and bell down below, because every week there's a new podcast episode here on the channel to help you go from feeling like a lost, insecure English learner to becoming a confident, natural English speaker. So hit the subscribe button in order not to miss a single new episode. Ksenia, I have some questions to ask you today, and I'm sure that your story can bring inspiration to learners and also tips and strategies that they can apply in their own English learning journey. So the first question is more to build some context here. You are from Ukraine, right? So how is English typically taught and learned in Ukraine?
First of all, I would want to tell that I'm from a small city in Ukraine. It's that's why I think depending on the city, depending on the school, the format of learning will also differ. So I was speaking about my own experience. It may be different from other people, right? But you were asking about in general, right? Back in the day, it was mostly like formal education from textbooks, lots of text to read, to translate, lots of grammar rules to learn. I can compare it with modern days. I have a daughter who's a second grader. Oops, third grader already. And when I look through her English textbook, it definitely differs from what I remember from my childhood. It focuses on developing more communicational skills. I see that there are many exercises on speaking, which I didn't have in my English classes.
Interesting. I asked you this because a follow-up question could be, once you finish, let's say, the basic education in Ukraine, let's say high school, do most Ukrainians speak English? I ask you that because here in my home country, in Brazil, it's quite different in the sense that we study English at school. It is part of the curriculum, but most Brazilians, when they finish high school, they can barely speak English because, there's so many deficiencies in the educational system. Is that the case in Ukraine?
Yeah, that, like, I can say that my level was not sufficient after school. Moreover, when we stopped our choice on English as a major at the university, we realized with my parents, right, that my level wasn't even enough to pass the entrance exam. That's why in my final year at school, we hired a private tutor to raise the level of my English to be able to, pass the exam. So I was totally not prepared, I don't know, for real life conversations with natives, for example. I would simply not understand them with connected speech and everything, right? Then listening, maybe it was a little bit better situation with listening. We did have some audio resources. We were working at school, but they were probably adapted, or they were not so difficult. It's not the same way as watching movies in English, right? It's like the recording was like pretty slow and everything was pretty understandable.
Would you say that wanting to get into university was the spark that you needed to, take your English to the next level then?
But let me now ask you, what did you mean by the word spark here for our listeners and watchers to get the idea?
Yeah. Usually when you start a fire, before the fire exists, there is the spark. Yeah. The spark is the initial phase of the fire, right? But figuratively speaking, in this case, a spark is something that triggers maybe something in your life. Yeah. So what made you want to deepen your knowledge of the English language? Was it to enter university? Was that the main motivator that sparked or created this interest?
That was on the surface. Yeah. That was the obvious reason. Definitely there was some deeper why. Maybe I wasn't even aware of that back then. I could honestly say yes. That was the biggest motivation for me. Just like I really wanted to get into the university. The reason why we chose English as a major, because that was one of my favorite subjects at school. I was pretty well at English compared to my peers. For example, my level was the highest, although you remember I already told you that the level wasn't enough. But even compared with like other kids, I felt comfortable in my English, right? So this is something I felt like I could develop more. This is something I wanted to, like, I was curious. I was interested in that. I don't know why. I still can't figure out what was that thing that got me interested in English. Maybe music, talking about my parents who were so far from learning English and learning languages at all. But one thing which was, I don't know, like a kind of an advantage or something. My mom is a musician, and my dad, she plays piano.
Nice.
And my dad, she likes music. He's into music. So they both were listening a lot of music at home. So music was always with me in my childhood, and most of the music they listened to, not most, I think all the music at home was English, American music. So I think I was growing up in the late 80s, early 90s. So artists like Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson were like, on top at that time. So all their songs, I couldn't understand, of course, but I was like humming something. Maybe that was something that, I saw my parents were like passionate about that. They were dancing, singing along, also without English, but something like, it's easy to sing to a popular song, even without knowing the lyrics. Maybe that was the spark also, another one.
I think it reminds me a little bit of how I grew up as well here in Brazil, because my parents didn't know much English then, but they also were very much into English songs and movies, right? So maybe growing up with that environment maybe planted a little seed already, yeah, for, liking English in the future, learning English, right? Usually when we start something like that, we face some obstacles, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, there were many obstacles for me in learning English. I think the hardest one, which I struggled the most with, was literal translation from Ukrainian into English. Because, like, you see, Ukrainian is so different from English. I mean, like, those are totally two different worlds. I was always constantly translating from Ukrainian into English to build a sentence. And that was really challenging because I couldn't form like the word order. Yeah, the word order was out of order. It was not like it is supposed to be in English because I was translating from Ukraine and we have a different word order. But yeah, this literal translation, not being able to think in English.
Yeah, that is definitely a pain point. I have heard so many students telling me, oh, I can't think in English, Thiago. I have to think in
Mhm.
my first language, Portuguese in my case here in Brazil, first, and then I translate it. Then that takes a long time. That's why I speak slowly, right? How did you fix that?
Definitely, it wasn't a magic wand or something. A lot of time, a lot of effort. I told you already, right, that before entering the university, we hired a tutor, private tutor, and I was working with her. She would always start her lesson not with something related to English or grammar or something related to language learning at all. She would always start having like a small talk with me, like asking about my day, about my week, what I did, like what was the most interesting for me this week. And it was like an, easygoing, light conversation in English. And I believe that was such a powerful tool. I didn't realize that was a tool at that time. I was just like, I was so naive. I honestly believed maybe she was really interested in my day, But now, being a teacher myself, I understand that it was like a psychological tool to get me relaxed, to get me comfortable. And we had this smooth transition into into the lesson itself. When you talk about something that is close to you, you would probably feel comfortable and feel at ease. And those words will come to you. Yeah. And with building vocabulary, they will come more like easier and easier.
That's true, yeah. So the more contact you have with English in this case, the more you will get to that point where you stop translating in your head, even to the point that you start dreaming. I had this phase for a while where I was dreaming in English, by the way, and usually that's a good sign that you are really internalizing the language yourself and you stop thinking in your native language. Did you have that phase? Did you dream in English for a while too?
Probably before exams, something like that. Can't remember very well.
So, Ksenia, you took those classes to enter university and you passed, right? You got it. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about that experience. What was it like learning English at university? You majored in English, right?
Yeah, exactly. I majored in the English language and foreign literature. It was really interesting. I cannot say that it was not hard for me. It was at times, but somehow it was so much better than school. School was the worst thing. I hated school. It's just like I was an A student. I studied there, right? I didn't have fun. I guess I didn't know how to have fun. Like all I did at school was studying. And in the contrast, the university became like this, I don't know, like I really, really enjoyed everything we learned there, like the people, the teachers, the atmosphere. It was so different for me. When I finished school, I started already thinking about myself, learning more about myself, reflecting on my personality. And English here, like, played such a huge role in transformation me as a personality to a better version of myself. When it was the first day at the university, I had a clear vision in my head that from this day, I'm a different person. Like I will be sociable. I will try to make as many friends as possible. I will be more confident in myself because coming back to school days, I really was shy. And if there was a conversation or something, I would probably be tongue-tied. And at the university, like I told you, I really wanted to start from the blank page, start a new life. And when you learn a language, this, I don't know the literal how it's put, but probably this proverb that like as many languages as many times you are a new person or something like that, right? English became like a tool for me to build this new persona, to build a new personality. And it helped. At the university, there were a lot of exercises on speaking. So I really spoke a lot. it also helped to develop not only my English speaking, but also just communicative skills. So I truly believe that my English personality is so much more confident than my Ukrainian personality even today, I
I was
think.
about to ask you that.
Yes, I believe so. I believe so because it all started with English. Yeah.
And I've already talked to Ethan many times during the podcast how I feel like I have a persona in English and one in Portuguese. And you are saying the same thing
Yeah.
now. Let's say that maybe your English persona is more outgoing,
Yeah.
more communicative, and the
Definitely.
Ukrainian one is a little bit more
Yeah.
shy, right?
Definitely.
And you figure that out at university, right? About the speaking lessons, how did you practice speaking there?
So, I think I was lucky because at that period, as I just make assumption, I'm not sure, but I'm making assumption that there was an inflow of many young teachers at the university. So the classes which were taught by, let's say, more seasoned, experienced teachers, they were more like traditional classes. But those teachers who were younger, passionate with new methodology, new vision for teaching, we were so lucky to get them because we were watching movies. Sometimes it was more like a treat. It wasn't such a regular thing for us, but more like a treat. We were mimicking a lot. So there were good recordings this time, songs. We were listening to songs. And I remember there were many dialogues. So we were writing dialogues on certain topics and we're playing them out in classrooms with the peer students.
And that university environment was mostly composed by non-native speakers of English, right, Ksenia? The students and the teachers.
Yeah.
You practiced English together, but all as non-natives, right?
Yeah, of course. The resources, the recorded resources, the audios were by natives, were recorded by native speakers of English. But all the talking was done by us, by the students.
I do want to go back a little bit and ask you a couple of questions. First of all, you said that you used to get tongue-tied before when you were a little bit more shy. What does that mean when you are tongue-tied?
Yeah, I like those visual metaphors in English. This idiom means that you freeze up. You cannot say anything.
It's like your tongue, gets frozen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say anything. Okay. And you mentioned also the word treat. You said that the younger teachers at university, sometimes they will play movies to you guys as a treat. What's that, a treat?
Something that you would treat yourself with on a Friday cheat day, for example. It's like something good, something you are looking forward to, something you like, something that brings you joy. In this case, of course, watching a movie was so much more fun than reading a text, let's say.
And what was the most important thing you learned in university?
Like I told you that after school, we were not prepared for proper communication in English. I was able to communicate in English at the university. One of the things I think that was so powerful in this regard was let's say we have a topic today. So usually there is a text with highlighted new vocabulary to learn. And we had to always make it personal. So we would read the text, learn the words, but then what we were doing, we would compile or create a new text on the same topic with the new vocabulary, but which would resonate with us, which would be personal for us. We would learn it by heart and we would go to a class and almost give a speech, right? Like recite it in class. And I believe that helped a lot. Not like she could just give us a task to learn by heart that text from the textbook, but that wasn't about me at all. It wasn't personal. I just read it and took some new words from that text. But when you transform it into your own experience, into your own text, and you write it and then learn it, and then you speak on this topic using this text, that helps you develop your communication skills. I think that's one of the most important things I took from the university, and I use a lot with my own students later.
How would you rate your English after university? Because before you entered, you were a little bit shy, as you said, and your English level was not good enough to enter, but then you worked on it, you got in, and you improved even more in university. How would you rate your English level then after university?
The education I got at my university was definitely a good one, a solid one, because we were trained as English teachers. My language was rather formal, so my conversation, let's say with a native speaker, would sound a little bit like bookish. I imagine they could laugh at me a little bit, or maybe not laugh, okay, but chuckle. Yes, we learned maybe some slang words or something, but we were not trained to use it. So we learned to know them in our passive vocabulary, but we were trained to use formal English more. So yeah.
You did say something nice there. Your communication was bookish. What does that mean?
Bookish is formal, something from books, textbooks, not colloquial or daily conversational.
And how did you improve your colloquial English after that university experience? How did you learn to be more, let's say, natural?
Yeah. So you see, I have this period in my life of a formal education at the university, first school, then university, and everything that was after I graduated was self-learning. And then it was a period of exactly watching movies deliberately in English, learning with them, listening to music and learning lyrics. So it was basically using our real life way method, living English, right? So it was, and like colloquial conversation English came from there.
So you truly lived your English for a while.
For a
right?
while, yeah.
To learn that. Is there anything that you find or that you found particularly challenging about self-learning at that point? Like improving your English on your own after university?
When it came to self-learning, that was my weak point. I can't tell about myself that I'm a good time manager. Like it's really hard for me to organize my day, my week, to schedule the learning. Like, I'm always running out of time. And I think that was the most challenging part, just to find that stable routine, to build a strong habit of, not just having fun with movies, but really sit and learn deliberately and not skipping.
And yet you were able to be consistent with your English to the point where, you got to the level you are today. So do you have any tips for our followers here about this? Like, if there is another learner listening to this and who struggles with the same thing, like, oh, I'm learning by myself. It's hard to keep the motivation or the consistency. I get excited for a while, but then, that excitement goes away. What would you recommend to this learner?
Well, first, you should be easy on yourself. Don't be so hard. I mean, like, there will be ups and downs. You will skip a day or two, and you should be fine with that. Like, just embrace that it is a part of the process. But what helps in most of the times is just like remembering why you're doing that. When you connect your English learning to something which is really, really close to you, which is really personal, and it's you understand the value behind it. Like you imagine, like, hey, like I'm doing it because, and you have this picture in front of you why you're doing that. It really helps. Even if you skip a day or two, you have this strong personal why, and it will push you forward always.
I am curious about something. How did you start working at Real Life English?
That's another podcast, but okay. So
let's give us the abridged version.
Abridged version. Abridged is what?
The shortened, the reduced version. Summarized.
There was a period in my life I was working, but my work was not connected to English at all. And it was like a pretty big chunk of my life. I was on a maternity leave. I felt kind of bored to stay with the kid at home doing nothing. And one of my friends, she had friends, like it always happens, who needed English lessons. And she just suggested me to take those students, like to become their tutor. And first thing I did, I refused. I told her, hey, Lena, I cannot do that. Like, how can I do that? Like, I forgot all of my English. Like, I haven't been using it for so long. And she told me, oh, you were the best in our group. If not you, then who? You can't do that. And everything they want is just like talking, having conversations in English. That's what they are asking for. Like, no grammar, no exercises, just talk to them. And you can do it, better than anyone I know. And yeah, I did it. But as I am a very responsible person, I realized that, okay, to teach somebody, I have to brush up on my English myself. So I took the course from RealLife English exactly with that aim, to brush up on my English first. But second, I needed a conversational real-life English because the requirement was the student wanted conversational English. So that's how I found real-life English. That's what I really needed at that time. And that's how I became a student of the course, to help me be a teacher for my student. Funny situation, but that's how it was.
That's incredible. So you joined as a student and then, you actually started working.
Yes, I've been the student of the RealLife English for a year when they had this open position, and I applied, and yeah, that's how I started working here.
And nowadays you are closely working with our students, right? With the Fluency Circle members, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm super happy to have so many friends there in the Fluency Circle from the times when I was a student there myself. Those people are still active in the Fluency Circle. I'm still talking to them as my friends. And of course, the group is joined by new students every week. And part of my role is be a community leader in that group. Right now, what they didn't have before is our rep, and they successfully combined the two. Chatting in the group, this is one format, right? The Fluency Circle is the group on Telegram where they daily, interchange texts and audio messages. Sometimes they're sending videos, organize meetings. But what we have and what we offer to our students now is our app. That's another format. And for people who are not into our courses, but on the RealLife app, this is the opportunity to be connected to other speakers, to practice your English speaking, right?
That's actually a great seg to a shout out here to one of our app users and also members here of our community.
Okay, sure. And we have a shout out today from our student Mark. And Mark says, great app. It gives me the opportunity not only to polish my speaking skills, but also to learn from other cultures around the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, for the wonderful comment and review. And dear listener, if you're not using the RealLife English app yet, go ahead and give it a try, because we've been talking all about today practicing, for example, you're speaking with non-native speakers and how powerful that is. Just like for Ksenia, it was really powerful. And you can do the same with the app. You can go there and have a short 4 to 8 minute conversation with another, likely non-native English speaker, and then you can practice your speaking skills for free, and the app is free to download and try. So I'm going to leave the link to the app here in the description of this video. Also, you can go to Google Play Store, Apple App Store, search for RealLife English and download the app from there, but do give it a try. So Ksenia, we do have here the question of the day, and the question of the day comes from this viewer who says, how can we relieve from stress, anxiety, and how to feel confident? Learning a language is too hard. We understand properly, but can't speak it. That's the main cause of stress.
Well, it's a difficult issue. First, it would need a couple of questions to ask. So I didn't quite understand what's the cause of the stress. Is it just like speaking, and why? Is it like the lack of vocabulary or fear of making mistakes, right? So there may be so many reasons for that. It's just like, I remember myself, yes, I was not able to speak and probably I was stressed out. For me personally, it was lack of vocabulary, I think, and my personality, that I was shy. So it was the same issue in my native language, not only English. So it requires really reflection and knowing yourself, and so it's so individual.
Ksenia, one final question. We talked about your journey today as an English learner. So if you could give only one piece of advice to all English learners in the world right now, what would it be?
Oh my God, it's so difficult one. Just one advice. I know, just love English, be curious, find yourself in English. Yeah. And truly believe, like, believe me, from my own experience, it will make you a better person. In this way or another, you can have totally different path compared to mine, but you will grow, you will develop in so many unexpected ways you cannot even imagine now. So just like grab the chance, grab the opportunity. Yeah, I believe that's the message. And be kind to those around you.
Amazing. Awesome way to close this week's episode. Ksenia, thank you for sharing your story with us. It was really cool. And guys, a free way to support us is by leaving us a 5-star review if you are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcasting platform. Also, if you are here on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and share the channel with your friends and family. All right? And remember, no matter what divides us, what unites us is far greater. See you next week and stay safe. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. All these are symptoms of imposter syndrome, the feeling of inadequacy a person feels in their own abilities. You feel inadequate, you feel fake or phony doing something, and you might be telling yourself things like, oh, this is not for me, this is too hard for me, I can't do it, it's easy for other people, but it's really hard for me. Yeah, or I feel weird, I don't feel like myself when I do it. If you think about it, it's actually insecurity.